Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thanks for stopping by again. I want to hit a couple points that have come up recently from people who have been visiting, and before I forget about them or let them slide, and that is regarding the transfer of money. Now, this is for people who are coming in order to rent or for an extensive period, or buy a house. If that's the case, then you're going to have money transferred here, I assume, to an account so you can pay your deposit and your first month's rent and whatever for a rental, and also, of course, your down payment for a house, and later on, the payment for the house itself. How you go about doing that, well, it's not unlike any other place except in the sense of getting your account set up. Now, one thing that surprises some people, especially for North America, where we're used to just walking in and setting up an account without any trouble. It may be the same in your country too, but usually in a matter of minutes you can get an account set up. That's because you're a citizen. Here, when you walk into an account, a tourist is not going to get a bank account set up. They'd be taking a very big risk if they did, because that would be not in accord with banking regulations here and common practice. And the simple reason being that if you're not living here and you show no intention of living here, then why do you need an account? And it sounds like here we worry about money laundering in the U.S. or another country. They'll worry about terrorism or whatever. They'll have regulations in place that say, you're not opening it up for someone who's a tourist and who can just disappear, and that account could be used for any number of purposes, and you don't have any way to get the person because they're not actually residing here. This sort of thing. So you're not going to get an account set up that way. However, the moment you go in and begin the process of getting a residency visa, your lawyer can give you the paperwork necessary to demonstrate that. Then, okay, they're willing to set up that account, since you are clearly indicating that you are going to be a resident. And that's one thing to keep in mind. But the other item, and perhaps the most important one, is getting the money out of your account wherever you live and into the account here. Now, Canadians and Americans live typically, many of them have retired or for business reasons or any other reason, live down in Mexico and Central America and Panama, the Caribbean. It's very common. We have over 1 million Americans are resident in Mexico, for starters, and there are so many others everywhere else, and Canadians as well, that the banks there, at least many of them, have some experience in moving stuff down here. Not a big deal at all. It's the backyard, basically. However, for some banks in Europe or Asia, it's going to be a different story. They're not used to shipping money off to Latin America. They may have all sorts of images of Panama, of course, the Panama Papers and all that nonsense, that somehow or other we're a suspicious country. So you need, and I'm saying in a nutshell, and I would suggest this for the Americans and the Canadians too, why not, is that if you're coming down and you expect to have to transfer a substantial sum of money that you can't handle just by going with an ATM card to a machine down here for a few $100. Well, if you're going to need that a substantial amount, you walk into your bank and you sit down with an officer of the bank and you say, this is what I'm planning to do. And I will expect that I'm going to have to transfer a substantial sum of money down. Obviously, if you're buying a house, a very substantial amount. What do I need to do in order to get this to happen? It's the first time that's always the most challenging. After you've done it once, it's no big deal. And they should explain specifically what you need to do. What I would do after that is get their name, their email address, and their phone number. And I drop them an email address following this with a summary of what you've been told, and say to them, now, have I covered everything that I need to cover? I just want to be sure that I understood you correctly. It's a polite thing to do. And it also allows you to get something back in the way of a response that is in writing, basically, saying, yeah, that's what you need to do. So you at least covered that particular aspect of it. Now, a gentleman just had some big problems out of Europe, because even though he had done that, he still found that he was unable to get money transferred. In fact, they froze his account. it got really complicated for them. It's very unusual. All right. On the other hand, if you think that your bank for any reason seems to be unused to this kind of activity, or you just are, it's just for the sake of, excuse me, of the record, a drink of water here. It's probably wise, as was done in one case here, is to get the name of the branch manager and their email address. So if you're here and you have problems, it's pretty straightforward what to do. If you've got that problem, then the suggestion I would have is if you're emailing and saying, look, you told me to do this and I've done this and it isn't happening, you can mail the person involved and copy it to the branch manager. And I don't want to overstress this because that's pushing it a little bit, but still, the point is that you're even more likely to get faster response than you would normally. And if you've got the same, you see, if you've got an email in there where you have described to them what it is you need to do, and the basis of your conversation with them, and they have responded saying, that's good, you've done exactly right, then that's the email you answer. You use it, you forward it basically back to the person you talked to, and if you want to put in the branch manager, fine. But anyhow, in other words, you're showing the documentation that you actually were told to do this, and so you're in the right. I don't want you to obsess on this. You know, this is very rarely a problem, but it can be a problem, and I have a suspicion we're going to see more of this from people coming in from Europe and Asia, just because their banks just aren't as familiar with Latin America and what to do here, or maybe suspicious of it or whatever, fantasy they may have about what it's like in Panama. But for you, your purpose is to get that money transferred here. So I wanted to stress that and make sure that you understood it and make your life a lot less complicated when that day comes. And I hope at some point it does when you decide to join us. Thank you for stopping by.